Welcome to Tikva's Pirkei Avot project, sponsored by our dear friends Camille and Sandy Kress. Our modern world is desperate for meaning. The traditional sources of authority, religious and political leaders, parents, teachers, have largely lost sway over their constituents, their children, their families, their communities. Where are the texts, the common texts, the shared language that once formed the basis and created the conditions of true community and real engagement? Where are the sources of meaning in today's world that Jews, young and old, can mine for its timely and timeless wisdom on questions both perennial and topical? For nearly 2,000 years, Jews have traditionally studied Pirkei Avot, the ethics or chapters of the fathers, on the 6 Sabbaths between the holidays of Passover and Shavuot. Pirkei Avot is a tractate from the vast sea of the Talmud that chronicles the teachings and writings of nearly 60 sages, spanning nearly 5 centuries of rabbinic activity. And in a word, wisdom is what Pirkei Avot teaches. It is the most concentrated location in the entire Jewish body of learning for ethical and moral wisdom. It is that repository of Jewish meaning and wisdom unrivaled by any other. At Tikva, we teach Jews, young and old, to engage in a serious, sophisticated manner with the Jewish tradition, with Jewish texts, Jewish ideas. And while Tikva to date has largely opened up the study of Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, through the Kress Hebrew Bible Project, this is our first sustained and systematic attempt to unpack the rabbinic teachings of Torah, the oral law, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, through our study of Pirkei Avot. So please join us every week as we hear from another great scholar, great mind of the contemporary world, Rabbi Dr. Jacob Schacter, Dr. Erica Brown, Dr. Dara Horn, Dr. Michal Biton, and others, as we engage in the wisdom of the Jewish tradition through the study of this unparalleled text.
In true Tikva fashion, this program is unique. It doesn't have a specific focus in terms of generation, in terms of age, in terms of demographic, but there's a combination here: parents and children and parents. The text that we'll be focusing on is Pirkei Avot, traditionally translated as Ethics of the Fathers, a title that makes me uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable with the gender formulation. I prefer to entitle this text Lessons from Authority Figures. And this goes really to the heart of what I believe this entire tractate and this work is about, and why I think it is particularly important at this very moment in the cultural zeitgeist of America and of the West. The central theme of this work is to appreciate, to underscore, to acknowledge, and to celebrate the power, the meaning, the value, the substance of authority. We don't make all of our own decisions. We don't decide, even though that's what the culture demands of us and expects of us. We have to step back and say, no, we're part of a tradition. We're part of a family tradition. We have parents. We have grandparents, great-grandparents. We are part of a religion that has generations, centuries, millennia of teachings. We need to appreciate that we don't necessarily determine the fullness of our behavior and value system. Part of that determination comes from understanding and appreciating those who came before us and the wisdom that they bear. The first word of this tractate, the first section, the first Mishnah, Moshe Kibel Torah miSinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. Sinai is the moment of revelation. God is sharing wisdom with a human being. And then Moses gives it to Joshua, and Joshua gives it to the elders, and the elders pass it on to the next generation and the next generation. And the entire tractate is a description of those teachings. And it's important for us to recognize that there is a Masorah here. There's a tradition. There's a chain of tradition that has value for us, that we appreciate, that we embed ourselves into and imbibe for ourselves and then pass on in appropriate, meaningful, substantive, loving ways to our children, for them to pass on to their children for all generations to come. We are living at a time in America and in the West of personal autonomy and individual choice, where authority is actually the opposite of the zeitgeist. And I feel it's very important to push back on this and to place authority at the center or near the center or towards the top of our religious and cultural value system. In 1985, the very prominent American sociologist of religion by the name of Robert Bellah and others, co-authors, published a book called Habits of the Heart. And in this book, in the 280th or so page, he wrote the following: "Today, religion in America is as private and diverse as New England colonial religion was public and unified." One person we interviewed actually named her religion, she calls it her faith, for herself. This suggests a logical possibility of over 220 million American religions. Now, we understand that by now, in the years since 1985, we have over 300 million people living in America. So potentially we can have 300 million plus separate religions in America, because every person can define what her or his religion means to them. He continues, "Sheila Larson is a young nurse who has received a good deal of therapy, who describes her faith as Sheilaism. I believe in God. I'm not a religious fanatic. I can't remember the last time I went to church. My faith is Sheilaism. It's just my own little voice. Be good to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Try to love yourself. God wants us to take care of each other." Sheila Larson, Sheilaism. Imagine what she would have named her faith if her name was Judy. But her name wasn't Judy. Her name was Sheila, Sheilaism. Sheilaism, since 1985, became the code word for the notion that I choose what I want to be in every realm of life. I am the arbiter of my destiny. I choose any level of commitment that I want to have. Stephen Cohen and Arnold Eisen published a book in 2000, and they took Sheilaism from the general world of sociology and brought it into Judaism. Their principal authority for contemporary American Jews, in the absence of compelling religious norms and communal loyalties, there's no such thing anymore as a compelling anything. There is no such thing as compelling religious norms or communal loyalties, has become the sovereign self. Sheilaism in the general world became the sovereign self in the Jewish world. We choose, we decide, we are on a journey, we don't really arrive, and what we do one day, we change the next day. And this is the core of contemporary culture that this series will aim to try to reframe for those parents and children who are lucky enough and blessed enough to be a part of this program. This central theme of the culture is very much part of the youth. Christian Smith wrote a very important work as well in which he highlights this. American youth, like American adults, are nearly without exception profoundly individualistic. Those parents who are listening know that this is an issue that they have to deal with their children. And children know that the issue of authority is something that they need to deal with their parents. And I think that is why this focus is so central and so significant, to highlight the notion of authority. One final source from outside of the tradition comes from the essays of Robert Cover. He's a very prominent legal theorist who taught at Yale University Law School. Cover, in one of his books, makes the following point. When I am asked to reflect upon Judaism and human rights, he says, of course, there's such a thing as human rights in Judaism, but the word rights is wrong. He says the category closest analogous to rights in the general world in Judaism is mitzvah. The principal word in Jewish law, which occupies a place equivalent in evocative force to the American legal system's rights, is a word mitzvah, which means literally commandment, but it means incumbent obligation. There's such a thing as a commandment, which means there is an authority. I can't choose. I can't decide. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, gave it to Joshua. Joshua passed it on. They passed it on. They passed it on. Our religion, and I'm going to argue American core values, need to be predicated on a recognition that we are not parachuted into this in every single generation to determine de novo what our value system is and what we consider to be crucial for central modes of behavior in our lives. But we come into this on the shoulders and following the footsteps of others. And we need to learn from them. And we need to defer to them. And we need to recognize there is wisdom there that would be of great benefit for us to be able to incorporate into our own lives. And I want to go one step further. I want to acknowledge the power, the centrality, the meaning, and the importance and the value of authority, even in the realm of ethics. Because in the realm of ethics, this is not keeping the Shabbat, this is not dietary laws. In the realm of ethics, we do perceive of a human being having more autonomy. I want to suggest that this work, Pirkei Avot, teaches us that even when it comes to human sensibilities and value systems, we need to also seriously take into consideration the teachings of those who came before us. Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tanura is one of the classical commentaries on the Mishnah in general, of which Pirkei Avot is one volume. And he teaches us, Lomar Lacha, the substance, the content of Pirkei Avot is ethics. It's human decency. And he says the goal of this is to teach us Shahamidot v'hamusarim, ethical dispositions and moral instructions in this tractate, Lo badu otam chachmei mishnah milibam. They didn't make it up. Ela elu ne'emru b'Sinai. It was given at Sinai. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. That's how this entire work begins. Sinai is revelation. Sinai is the time when God revealed himself to the Jewish people and to the world and gave them a Torah. And from there, everything goes. And so I want to make a case, and I'm suggesting that this entire work makes a case to recognize the power, the centrality of authority. Now, we need to understand how that plays out. In an article published in 1958, Jerome Carlin and Saul Mendelowitz differentiated between two types of authority. And I think there's a lot of wisdom here. One is imperative authority. The other is influential authority. You see, in the good old days, there was imperative authority. Parents told children what to do. Rabbis told congregants what to do, and they did it. Or at least they felt they should do it. Or the parent or the religious authority figure felt that they had a right to demand certain behaviors of their children or congregants. That's God. I recognize that. It's not imperative authority, it's influential authority. And the role of parents is to influence their children, to acknowledge the value that they have for them in their lives, to influence them, to appreciate their authority, to appreciate their wisdom, and to understand. Parents have a great deal to teach their children, not just in terms of actions, but in terms of values, in terms of beliefs, in terms of dispositions, in terms of appreciating the kind of world in which we live. I wish you well as you embark on this very, very exciting endeavor and journey. Parents and children, children and parents, it doesn't get better than this. May you be successful, both parents and children, respecting one another, appreciating one another, learning from one another, and growing closer to one another.